Good morning, students. I hope you all are doing well at your places. And today we'll be studying a very interesting chapter about the ant and the grasshopper. So let's just begin with this chapter. The title of our chapter is The Ant and the Grasshopper, right? देखिए विलियम सोमरसेट मॉगम राइट is the author of this story. In story के author कौन है? Mr. Morgan, and the story is all about being prepared for the challenges, being prepared of all those hurdles that came across in our lives, and hard work, right? How we have to do hard work. If we work hard and plan for the future, we want ourselves find ourselves in grasshopper condition. अगर हम पहले से ही अपने फ्यूचर के लिए हार्ड वर्क करेंगे तो हम ग्रास हॉपर जैसी कंडीशन पे ऐसी पोजीशन पे नहीं पहुंचेंगे, राइट? रिलाइंग अदर्स कि आप दूसरों पे क्या कर रहे हैं, रिले कर रहे हैं, मीन्स डिपेंड कर रहे हैं. दिस रिले मीन्स टू डिपेंड ऑन अदर्स. बट द आंट रिफ्यूजेस टू स्टॉप वर्किंग. बट जो आंट है ही रिफ्यूजेस टू स्टॉप वर्किंग. एंड लेट्स जस्ट रीड द स्टोरी टू नो व्हाट दिस इज अबाउट. When I was a small boy, I made to learn by heart certain fables of La Fontaine. What are fables? Fables are those short stories that give us lessons. जैसे हमें lesson मिलते हैं. So when I was a very young boy, I learned so many stories, fables of La Fontaine. एक author होंगी, and the moral of each was carefully explained to me, and the moral of each story was very much keenly described towards me. And among those I learned was the ant and the grasshopper. जिसमें से मैंने इतनी सारी stories में इतने सारे fables में पढ़ी हैं. तो एंट और ग्रास हॉपर की स्टोरी बहुत ज्यादा फेमस नाउ विच इज डिवाइज्ड टू ब्रिंग होम टू द यंग एंड द यूजफुल लेसन, जो कि एक रिलेटेड टू क्या है, एक बहुत ही ज्यादा यंग लेसन, यूजफुल लेसन के ऊपर डिपेंड है. एंड इन एन इम्परफेक्ट वर्ल्ड, इस इम्परफेक्ट वर्ल्ड में इंडस्ट्री इज रिवॉर्डेड एंड लेजीनेस इज पनिश्ड. इंडस्ट्रियस, यहाँ पे इंडस्ट्री इज मीन्स इंडस्ट्रियस द वन हु इज वेरी हार्ड वर्किंग, एंड द अदर वन लेजीनेस इज he or she will be punished, right? So in this admirable fable, इस admirable means बहुत ही ज़्यादा inspirational fable में I apologize for telling something which everyone is politely but inexactly opposite to know. मतलब जो चीज़ें सही लगती हैं but वो already में कैसी हैं, बहुत ही ज़्यादा opposite, right? And he is apologizing means he is saying sorry in introduction only, right? The ant spends a laborious summer gathering her winter store. Actually जो aunt है, she is spending a lot of hard work gathering for her winter store. कि winters आने लगे हैं तो she is just gathering, she is doing all those work. While the grasshopper जो है he sits on a blade of a grass के blade पे he is just sitting quietly singing to the sun. गाना गा रहा है वो sun के through. Winter आने वाली है and aunt is comfortably provided for, but the grasshopper has an empty larder. Empty larder means उसका जो बोरी बिस्तर है वो बिल्कुल खाली है. Whereas this aunt, she is comfortably doing all those works जो कि उसके लिए बहुत ही ज़्यादा beneficial. Now he goes to the aunt and begs for a little food कि थोड़ा खाना दे दीजिए मेरे को. Then the aunt gives her classic answer. Aunt उसको बहुत ही ज़्यादा एक classic answer देती है. What were you doing in the summer time? आप summer time पे क्या कर रहे थे? Now saving your presence, I sang and sang all day and night. All day and night I was just singing the songs you sang when they go and dance. और जब आप देख सकते हैं कि जब वो टाइम चला गया, अब आप बैठ के डांस करिए जब आप उस वक्त गाना खा रहे थे. I could not help thinking of this. I could not help thinking of this fable that it was too famous that when the other day I saw George Rumsey को देखा, he was just launching himself in a restaurant. वो अपने आप को launch कर रहा था, right? I never saw anyone wearing an expression of such deep blue. He was wearing an expression of deep blue means he was feeling very sad at that time, and he was staring into the space. He was just looking at some space. He looked as though the burden of the whole world has sat on his shoulder. He was feeling that as if the burden of whole world has come on his shoulders. So he was very sorry for him, and I suspected at once. Suspected means मेरे को doubt हुआ once that his unfortunate brother had been causing trouble again कि उसका भाई उसको वापस से नुकसान पहुंचा रहा है. I just went up to him and held out my hand. मैं ऊपर गया. I just went up to him. मैं उसके पास गया. Just held out my hand. How are you? I asked, and he was asking how are you? I'm not in a hilarious spirits, he answered. Hilarious means disaster spirits में मैं नहीं हूँ. I'm totally fine. Is it Tom again? He is saying कि क्या ये Tom है? He sighed, yes, this is Tom again. ये Tom ही है. Why don't you chuck him? इसको जाने क्यों नहीं देते हो? You have done everything in the world for him. You have done a lot of chores for him, and you must know by that he is quite hopeless. ये कैसा है? He is quite hopeless. Now, I suppose that every family has a black sheep. हर किसी के घर में एक ना एक नमूना होता है. Tom has been a sore trail to him for 20 years. And कौन है उनके घर में 20 साल से? वो टॉम है. He had begun the life decently enough. उसने अपनी लाइफ को बहुत ही ज़्यादा डिसेंटली स्टार्ट किया था. He just went into business. First he did business, then married, and then he had two children, right? And the Ramsey, they were perfectly respectable people, and they are very much respectable, have good image in society, and there were reasons to suppose that Tom Ramsey would have a usual and has a useful and a very honorable career. कि उनका career कैसा था? बहुत ही ज़्यादा respectful. But one day, without warning, he announced that he didn't like work. कि उसको काम करना बिल्कुल पसंद नहीं है, and he wasn't suited for marriage, and he was not suitable, was not adaptable to marriage. He wanted to enjoy himself. He wanted to enjoy his company. Right? He had a very little money, so he spent 2 years in the various capitals of Europe. He was having that time very few money, and he just spent all his 2 years in Europe. Right? Rumors of doing reached his relation from time to time, and they were profoundly shocked. और धीरे धीरे टाइम के अकॉर्डिंग ये चीजें rumors फैलते गए उनके रिलेशनशिप में. He certainly had a very good time. उसका बहुत ही ज्यादा अच्छा टाइम था. They shook their heads and asked कि what would happen if when the money was spent, कि जब पैसा खर्च हो जाता है तो फिर क्या होता है. They soon found out, उन्होंने ये पता लगाया, he borrowed, और उन्होंने उस चीज को borrow किया था. Now he was very charming and unscrupulous, means he was not doubtful at that time. I have never met anyone who is too difficult to refuse a loan. कि ये क्या है, लोन वापस करने में बहुत ही ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही है. Now he made a steady income from his friend and he made friends easy. और वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा दोस्त बना लिया करता था जल्दी से, and he had a fixed income. But he always said that that the money you spend on necessity was boring. He always used to complain that whatever things you are spending on necessities, right? It was all boring. The money that was amusing to spend was the money you spend on luxuries. That money is very good that you spend on luxuries. आप अपनी luxuries पे spend करते हैं. For this, he is dependent on his father, on his brother George, and for this, he was totally dependent, relying on his brother George. Right? He did not waste his charm on him. उसने अपना charm उनके ऊपर waste नहीं किया. He was a very serious man and insensible to such enticements. I mean, to such emotions, he was too insensible, and he was totally a serious man, his brother. जॉर्ज वॉज रिस्पेक्टेबल, बहुत ही ज्यादा रिस्पेक्टेबल था. एक दो बार वो गिर भी गया है. टॉम प्रोमिसेस ऑफ अमेंडमेंट मीन्स चेंजेस, एंड गिव हिम considerable sums in order that he might have a fresh start. कि मतलब a brother is helping the another brother that he can lend some amount and he can do his own business. And on these, इसी वजह से ये टॉम ने क्या लेकर आया, एक मोटर कार लेकर आया और कुछ बहुत ही ज्यादा अच्छी ज्वेलरी लेकर आया. बट जब सर्कमस्टांसेस फोर्स हो गए जॉर्ज टू रियलाइज दैट हिज ब्रदर वुड नेवर सेटल डाउन, कि उसका भाई कभी सेटल डाउन नहीं होगा, ही वॉश्ड हिज हैंड फ्रॉम इट, अपना पीछा छुड़ा लेना. वॉश्ड हिज हैंड फ्रॉम ऑफ हिम मीन्स अपना पीछा छुड़ा लेना. टॉम विदाउट अ क्वाम मीन्स ही वाज नॉट फीलिंग दैट लाइक एक बिना रुके began to blackmail him. उसको क्या करने लगा, ब्लैकमेल करने लगा. It was not very nice for a respectable lawyer to find his brother taking cocktails behind the bars in his favorite restaurant. मतलब it was not at all good because his brother was engaged in bad activities. He was just involving in addictive activities like taking alcohol in his favorite restaurant, and to see him waiting on the box सीट ऑफ टैक्सी आउटसाइड द क्लब, कि क्लब में जो टैक्सी है वो बाहर आउटसाइड उसकी वेट कर रहे हैं. ही यूज्ड टू लाइक, ही इज नॉट लाइकिंग इट कि इतने अच्छे लॉयर के भाई को he is indulging in all those bad activities. Now Tom's had to serve in a bar and drive a taxi was a perfectly decent occupation. He was like, कि Tom said कि ये बार में सर्व करना बिल्कुल ठीक है, टैक्सी चलाना इट्स अ गुड प्रोफेशन. But George could oblige with him a couple of £1,000. He Did not mind for the honor of family giving it up, कि चलो ठीक है, करना चाहता है, let him do, but he was not at all happy with जॉर्ज पेड, जॉर्ज ने उस बिहाफ पे पे कर दिया. नाउ फॉर 20 years टॉम रेज्ड एंड गैम्बल्ड एंड फिलियंडर्ड. व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय फिलियंडर? फिलियंडर का मतलब होता है जो चीज, जो लोग फ्लर्ट करते हैं विद द प्रिटीएस्ट गर्ल. फिलियंडर इज द वन पर्सन हु डू फ्लर्टिंग विद द प्रिटीएस्ट गर्ल, राइट? और वो क्या कर रहा है कि इतने ईयर हो गए, टॉम वाज अगेन इन दैट रेस, ही वाज जस्ट डूइंग फिलियंडर विद द प्रिटीएस्ट गर्ल. एंड देखिए, दिस इज सुपरलेटिव डिग्री ऑफ एडजेक्टिव. वहां पे खाया करता था एट एंड द मोस्ट एक्सपेंसिव रेस्टोरेंट में ब्यूटीफुली ड्रेस्ड लड़कियों के साथ. And though he was 46, and how old he was 46, and would never have taken him for more than 35. He used to feel that he is not more than 35. He feels like I'm a very energetic person. And he was the most amusing companion. And most amusing means very charming companion. And though you know that he was perfectly worthless, और वो कैसा था, बिल्कुल नखट्टू आदमी था, and could not even enjoy his society. अपनी society को भी enjoy नहीं कर पाता. He had high spirits, unfailingly gaiety and incredible charm. उसका charm बहुत ही अच्छा था. He was unable to believe. Incredible means unable to believe, and gaiety means gaiety. Basically उसके चलने का जो style था वो बहुत है, manner of walking. I never grudged the contributions. Grudge means मेरे मन में कभी कोई बुरी feeling नहीं थी. He regularly leaned on me for necessity of his existence. Levied on me means he was totally dependent on his brother for his necessity. Right? I never lent him 50 pounds without fearing. मतलब मैंने 50 pounds lend करते हुए भी कभी कोई बात के लिए डरा नहीं है. And I was in debt. I was in debt means मैं कर्जे में था. And you could not approve of him, but you could not help liking him. अभी इस बात से मुकर तो नहीं सकते, but I'm not liking his behavior now. Poor George, only a year older than his scrappish brother. Scrappish means जो किसी काम का नहीं होता. If Tom was 46, he was 47, and उसका जो भाई है he looked 60 and he used to look 35, right? He had never taken more than fortnight holiday in a year for a quarter of a century. Quarter of a century ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा कि इस सेंचुरी में 3 महीने में वो एक बार कभी ट्रिप पे गया हो. He was in his office every morning from 9:30 and never left it till 6. 6 बजे से पहले वो कभी घर वापस नहीं आया करता था. He was so hard working. He was honest and industrious. What do you mean by industrious? The one who is very laborious. The one who is very much laborious and hardworking are those we are very industrious people. And worthy. Worthy means उसका कुछ था वजूद. He had a good wife. Good wife थी. Whom he had never been unfaithful. वो कभी उनके साथ dishonest नहीं रहा. Even in thought. And 4 daughters to him were the best to his fathers. कि उसके father की चारों बेटियां बहुत ही ज्यादा best थी. और वो अपनी wife के लिए कभी सोच के भी उस मतलब कभी सोच में भी he was not unfaithful to his wife. He made a point of saving a 1/3 of his income. Now he had decided that he will save his money. That is 1/3 of his income he will save. And his plan was to retire at 55 to a little house in the country. Country में he will be retiring at 55, and where he possess to propose to cultivate कि वो गार्डन को कल्टीवेट करेगा और गोल्फ खेलेगा. His life was totally blameless. मतलब आज तक उसको किसी ने ब्लेम नहीं किया. He was very glad that he was growing old and Tom was growing old too. He was glad कि मैं भी बढ़ रहा हूँ एज में और टॉम भी बढ़ रहा है. But he rubbed his hand and said, उसने अपने हाथों से पीछा छुड़ा लिया and it said it was all well when Tom was young and good looking, but now he is here younger than I am. कि वो मुझसे सिर्फ एक ही साल छोटा है और जब वो छोटा था he used to look more handsome, right? In 4 years he will be 50 and कुछ सालों में he will be 4 सालों में he will be 50 because he is 46 and he is 47. He won't find life so easy then. उस टाइम पे वो लाइफ इतनी नहीं सी नहीं होगी. I shall have 30,000 pounds by my side by the time I am 50. By the time I am 50, I'll be having 30,000 pounds because he has decided to save 1/3 of his money. For 25 years, I have said Tom would end in gutter. कि Tom कहाँ जाएगा? कूड़े के नाले में जाएगा. And we shall see that how he likes that. कि उसको कैसे पसंद आता है. We shall see for it really pays best to work. क्या यह बिल्कुल सही बात है कि आप काम करके खुश हैं या फिर खाली बैठ के. Now, poor George, I sympathize with him कि मुझे उस पर तरस आता है. I wonder now that I sat down beside him. अभी तो मैं उसके पीछे हूँ. But what infamous thing Tom had done, George was inevitably very upset about that. कि वो बहुत ही चीजों में गलत है. Now, do you know what happened now? He asked me. उसने पूछा कि do you know कि अब क्या होने वाला है? कि I was prepared for the worst. मुझे पता है कि मैं बुरी चीजों के लिए भी प्रिपेयर हूँ. देखिए, good, better, bad, worse, worse, worst. This is the superlative degree of adjective. I wonder कि Tom had gone into the hands of the police. पुलिस के हाथों में जाएगा ये at the last, and George hardly bring himself to speak. और जॉर्ज बीच में नहीं बोलेगा. You are not going to deny that my life I have been hard working. आप ये इस बात से डिनाई नहीं कर सकते that I am hard working. I am a very decent and a very respectful and a straightforward person, right? And after a life of industry means यहाँ पे industrious है, और thrift means बहुत ही ज्यादा पैसों को कम खर्चने वाला. अगर इसके आगे हम spend लगा दें, spend thrift, देन spendthrift इज अ पर्सन जो पैसा खर्चते हुए कभी नहीं सोचता, एंड थ्रिफ्ट इज अ पर्सन जो पैसा खर्चते वक्त सोचता है. आई कैन लुक फॉरवर्ड ऑन रिटायरिंग ऑन अ गिल्ट एज. कि तुम क्या हो गया, गिल्ट एज सिक्योरिटीज की. अगर मैं रिटायर भी हो रहा तो मैं ऐसी पॉइंट पर हूँ कि आई हैव नो गिल्ट, राइट. आई हैव ऑलवेज डन माई ड्यूटी इन द स्टेट ऑफ लाइफ. आई वॉज प्लीज, इट वॉज प्लीज प्रोविडेंस टू प्लेस मी. कि ये मेरे लिए एक पीएफ जैसा काम करेगा कि आई वॉज सो हार्ड वर्किंग. ट्रू, यू कांट डिनाई दैट टॉम हैड बीन एन आइडल. बिल्कुल खाली रहता है, वर्थलेस, जिसका कुछ नहीं है. डिसॉल्यूट मीन्स इधर उधर हंटता रहता है वो. ही इज जस्ट वेस्टिंग हिज टाइम. डिसऑनरेबल, कोई इज्जत नहीं है उसकी. रोग, खाली घूमता है. एंड इफ देयर वर एनी जस्टिस ही हैड बीन अ वर्कहाउस. अगर कुछ भी ऐसा होता तो वो आज हमारे घर पे होता. नाउ, ट्रू, जॉर्ज ग्रू रेड इन हिज फेस. उसको बहुत गुस्सा आ रहा है. अ फ्यू वीक्स अगो ही बिकेम एंगेज्ड टू अ वुमन इनफ ओल्ड इनफ टू हिज मदर. कुछ टाइम में बाद वो अब किसी लड़की के साथ लगा हुआ था जो कि उसकी मॉम की एज की थी. एंड नाउ शी डाइड एंड लेफ्ट हिम एवरीथिंग. शी सेड £500,000, a yacht, a house in London and a house in the country. अब वो औरत मर गई है और ये सब चीजें उसके उसके भरोसे छोड़ के गई है. ना जॉर्ज राम से बीट हिज क्लिंच फर्स्ट ऑन द टेबल. मतलब उसने टेबल के ऊपर ऐसे किया. नॉट फेयर, आई टेल यू, इट्स नॉट फेयर, डैम, इट्स नॉट फेयर. ये बिल्कुल भी सही नहीं है. आई कुड नॉट हेल्प हिम. आई बर्स्ट आउट अ शाउट ऑफ लाफ्टर एंड लुक एट जॉर्ज wrathful face. Wrathful means totally destroyed, and he couldn't stop himself from laughing. I just rolled in my chair. मैं अपनी चेयर पे बैठ के ही एकदम मेरा दिमाग घूम गया. I was nearly fell on the floor. और मैं फ्लोर पे गिर गया. जॉर्ज नेवर फॉरगिव मी. जॉर्ज मुझे कभी, मैं तुमको कभी माफ नहीं करूंगा. बट टॉम ऑफन आस्क मी टू साइलेंट टू एक्सीलेंट डिनर्स. की बहुत सारे डिनर्स पे चलते हैं इन दिस चार्मिंग हाउस इन मे फेयर. बट ओकेजनली बोरोज अ ट्रिफल मोर देन मी. मतलब वो मेरे साथ कभी एक अच्छी जगह घूमने नहीं गया है, बट वो मुझसे बहुत ही ज्यादा पैसे मांगता है. इट इज merely the force of habit, and it's never more than a sovereign. Sovereign means independent. ये कोई अच्छी आदतें नहीं है. एंड इट्स नेवर बीन मोर देन अ sovereign. कि वो कभी इंडिपेंडेंट नहीं हो पाएगा. So I hope you all understood this story. This story was all about two brothers, that one is hardworking, one is not. You also please do hard work for your life, and please stay blessed all the time and keep studying hard for your exam, and thank